Ken Jeong joins me live in Studio Q. See, wasn't that worth it?
You mentioned my name 3 times, and I was impatient. You're right. As we talked before, you said you would mention my name, and I just didn't trust you.
I wasn't just mentioning your name. You didn't trust me.
Well, there's all these cues looking at me, and
Yes.
I just got nervous, and in retrospect, it was all my fault. So thank you so much.
You have an illustrious career already that I am that I'm spelling out in that introduction for you.
Well, it's just like how I wrote it. So
I saw you on Fallon last night, and I think we have something in common.
Yeah.
Which is fathers who think we could be better than. I always joke about my Ken Jeong. He is #1, much better than you. And you were talking about your
my
dad.
dad says your performance. He's kind of a critic, but I don't think his criticism is as constructive as it could be. He's like, your performance. How you say you 한국말 영어는 you suck.
Does he say you suck?
No, that was just for the story.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
So you're just lying.
I'm lying. I'm an actor.
You have called Leslie Chow, this is your character on the Hangover film series, one of your favorites.
The favorite.
The favorite. Why is that?
Because it is. I quit my day job as a physician to do acting in the hopes of doing a character like this, where it's so different from who I am, and the spectrum of imagination with this character is so wide that you can literally say or do anything as Mr. Chow. And it's been beyond a dream come true, because I always was just concerned that I would just get nothing but scientist roles, or because I have a medical background, I'd be bring in the microscope guy, like I was just nervous that I would be the scientist on everything. And so even if some people accuse me of being typecast as a crazy guy, that to me is like the biggest compliment ever, because it to me I don't know, it's beyond anything that I could have imagined in my career.
I saw the advance of this Hangover 3, and you're in it a lot. You have a greatly expanded role in this film. In fact, one might say the film turns on you. You are the star of this film. How did that happen? Was that something that? How did that come about? Did you lobby for that? I want to be the star. How did it happen?
It all happened all organically. It was fun. I remember after Hangover 2, Mr. Chow goes to prison at the end of Hangover 2, and when I heard they were doing a Hangover 3, I remember thinking, and no one knew about the story or anything except for Todd Phillips, the director and writer. And I said, I just kept telling my wife, like, I hope he went to prison. I hope he's in the 3rd one. So you don't know until you know. And so I was just wanting to be in. I just remember like a year and a half ago just wanting to be in the 3rd one. That was it. And then when I read the script and Todd gave me a copy of the script, I was just blown away. I mean, it's the biggest part I've ever had in anything, and that's not lost on me at all. I'm just so grateful that I'm even in the 3rd, and much less having this expanded role.
It's huge, and you are very funny. You have this fascinating story, Ken. So I mean, you've said you never had aspirations to be a performer, but you started doing stand-up comedy while you were in med school in Northern California, while you're doing your residency in New Orleans as well. That's such a wild juxtaposition. What was it about doing stand-up that attracted you then?
Well, I wanted, as a kid in high school, I never had any aspirations to be a performer. And then I took an acting class at university at Duke. That's where I went to college. And I was just hooked on performing from that, basically. And so once I got into medical school, and I was pre-med, and I had actually got accepted into my drama department program at Duke University, but because I was so busy with pre-med, I ultimately had to pass, kind of regrettably. Mm-hmm. And once I got accepted into medical school, I couldn't do any more theater. That's what I really wanted to do, was kind of acting in theater. And so I started doing stand-up comedy because it was really like an efficient outlet for me. I still had the performing bug, It wasn't ideally acting, which is really what I wanted to do, but I always had a kind of leaning towards comedy, even like in the acting classes that I took. So,
but you continued in medical school. Did you like medical school?
I liked. I'll be honest. I mean, I was so grateful to get accepted in medical school. Even had like a partial scholarship to University of North Carolina Med School, and it really, I don't know, it just changed my life in terms of worldview perspective. But it might have been a little bit too much too soon. Like I was a young kid. I don't think I've ever said this in an interview, but I graduated. I skipped a grade when I was a kid, like second grade,
You're a
and
smart
I
guy.
graduated college when I was 20. So when you're, kind of the downsides of being that kind of having that kind of like precocious kind of image, I don't know, you almost don't appreciate what you have when it's so early in your life.
Mm.
So here I am at the age of 20, entering med school, wanting to be a performer. So I think the circuits were a little bit crossed at that time, and it
Did you
was
have parental pressure to be
parental pressure to do it,
med school?
to do med school, but it wasn't as didactic as kind of where stereotyped, like Asian parents are stereotyped to be. My dad and I were really brutally honest with each other, and we really talked about like what are the, let's say you go to LA and try to pursue your dream. What are the chances realistically of you getting it? And this is what my father, he and I would discuss, and we really didn't have a good answer. I'm like, well, I kind of agree with you there because I think it would take a long. I may never, I may never succeed. You just never know in that. But I didn't have the confidence because it's not all merit based in showbiz.
So what was the turning point from being a doctor to pursuing comedy?
The turning point, honestly, was when I did my residency in New Orleans in internal medicine, it's general practice, and my program director was head of Jazz Fest in New Orleans, but he was a really respected nephrologist. So he was a guy who blended his love of jazz and his love of music and medicine, and he was my mentor in residency, and he said that we don't want you to be the stereotypical doctor who doesn't do anything except golf on the side. We want to capitalize on your own uniqueness. You will be a better doctor because of your comedy background, and you will be a better comedian because of your medical background. And that last statement just blew my mind.
Yeah, and do you believe that? Do you think being a doctor has helped you be a better comedian?
I think as a physician, just maybe not directly, but indirectly. And I practiced for 7 years full time as a generalist in California. And medicine at the end of the day, at least the stuff that I do, is
hilarious.
It's about being naked, and medicine is about listening, and because you want to listen to the patient,
Right,
and
sure.
acting is about listening. That at the end of the day, that's all acting is. You're listening and reacting to your scene partner, and so for me. I learned a lot with that, and also I was doing stand-up comedy on the side even when I was practicing, and that really that loosens you up in terms of your bedside manner, and you actually make science your art. So in a way, the really good physicians, and my wife is a doctor and still practices. Every physician has their own certain style and voice, so you make science your art, and your art your science.
I mean, the other thing about being a doctor, I've learned from talking to and hanging around with some doctors, is you have to, if you'll excuse the pun, you have to develop a sense of community very quickly with a patient. You have to be there for them. You have to earn their trust within moments of because they're depending on you for a diagnosis or for comfort or to soothe anxiety or whatever it is. And that can certainly inform you as a performer. You talked about the juxtaposition of who you are and then playing a character like Chow. From The Hangover, Ken, to Community, you often play these over-the-top antagonistic types. What attracts you to those kind of roles, and what makes you so adept at them?
I mean, I think I'm tapping into something where there's like a love of like villains with a sense of humor. Like I've always loved like the Joe Pesci role in Goodfellas. I've always like gravitated toward like just villains with a sense of humor. Just always makes me laugh, and that I get, for some reason, I'm just intrinsically drawn to that. So that probably has a lot to do with cultivating my instincts. And even in Knocked Up, where I played a physician, it was in many ways the character in Knocked Up is the most evil because it's so real, and I played it based on physicians that I knew who had a bad day, so it's really, it was so layered in that. So you're absolutely right. I think that's something I'm just, for some reason, kind of intrinsically drawn to.
How much those instincts to like a character like Chang, who's just so wild, kind of in all directions, unpredictable, spontaneous, funny, but zany. Where does that come from in you?
I look at Community as the ultimate my ultimate acting school. It's really been it's like my postgraduate work, because every season on Community, I like Chang's a different character, and
Hmm.
they kind of I think sometimes, to be honest, for better or for worse, he's a different character sometimes with mixed results, in my opinion. But the great thing about it is it's experimental theater for me. You get to really do anything from being a Professor Chang to Changnesia to like a student to like a prison guard, to like a security guard. So I've I've become a much better actor after 4 years of Community. That's been my acting school. So it's so for me, I don't look at Community any more than just I'm hanging out with my best friends, like Mikhail and those guys are like, we're all like family, and so I feel like we're like a theater group, and I'm just doing experimental theater
It's
with it.
experimental theater that excites a lot of people and has developed this massive following of people who adore you. And at the same time, there are some things that you do that tweak people the wrong way, particularly in the character, not just of Chang, but Leslie Chow in The Hangover. You've become a controversial figure for some in the Asian American community. So some argue a character like Leslie Chow in The Hangover reinforces Asian stereotypes. His accented English is mocked in the film. He's often kind of emasculated by other characters. Others say Chow is the one in control and his craziness actually subverts stereotypes. Where are you at on that debate around you and
Neither. I mean, you're an actor. I don't act for my community. I act for me. I mean, to me, even Denzel has said, who's one of my heroes, in an interview, I think on NPR, there was like, do you often play roles that gravitate towards role models, playing role models in movies? He goes, no, I just act and do stuff that interests me. I'm selfish, and he is considered at the forefront of his community in acting, and for me, Mr. Chow, to me, is a meta joke. In comedy, meta comedy, Community is perfect at it, making fun of comedy, making fun of the stereotype.
right.
And my favorite scene in all three Hangover movies is going, fat guy fall down, so funny. And that was an ad lib that I did after Zach Galifianakis fell down, because you're commenting on the stereotype. It's the Asian guy making fun of his own stereotype, commenting on why the audience is laughing right now in that scene, falling down, because the audience is laughing when Zach falls out of that car, and then I'm actually commenting on it, and in the full scene that I did, I was explaining to my bodyguards why I'm laughing and what comedy is, because Zach had fallen out of a car before. I said, in comedy, this is called callback. I had a whole thing where a whole run was like meta commentary, commenting on a comedy, and it's so funny, like in The Hangover, where I mean, you have a character called Black Doug, and it's so obvious. It's just they're poking holes at so many conventions, and even when I'm speaking in the accent, I'm speaking Vietnamese. My wife is Vietnamese. I'm Korean. I'm speaking Vietnamese gibberish, like "got chick," and it was like that means chicken die. Doesn't mean release the prisoner. And I was doing that deliberately because, I know. Like, I'm a doctor. I'm not an idiot. I know that these roles, like a lot of Asian actors, were reading and getting rejected for Asian microscope scientist number 6 and not getting those parts. It sucks, for a
But
lot
then you
of us.
must get the question, and I know some of
Yeah.
your contemporaries, John Cho, who's a kind of
Yes.
friend of yours.
He's a friend of mine.
Do you feel like you have to represent?
I think I represent by my actions. I don't represent by my words. And I think that, anyone, and John Cho's a really good friend of mine, and everyone, and that's another thing. Every Asian actor, like John's a good friend of mine. Daniel Day Kim's a good friend of mine. You couldn't have 3 more different personalities that are, that are approaching that are acting with 3 very different approaches. And I think, and I've talked about it with those guys, and it's like that's the beauty of diversity in the Asian community. When you don't. I mean, none of us like set out to be role models. If you want to be a role model, like go into politics, go into something else. I mean, you gotta. I mean, we're actors who entertain, and all I'm doing is just following my own artistic voice. I'm not trying to be the voice of anything except the voice of myself. I'm just trying to figure out my own voice at this point, and that's ever evolving. And it's not just a voice as an actor. I mean, I'm a father of 2. I have twin girls at home, and honestly, that is. My whole thing today is not even my most important thing this week is getting home on time tomorrow to get to the PTA meeting Thursday at 5 o'clock. It's not about trying to, I just want to be there for my kids because they have this big open house where they get to show off everything in their classroom. So to me, that's in my head the most important thing I got to do this week. So I don't know. I think people who often say they're a role model and they do things and they say they do things to be a role model aren't role models in my opinion. That's the bottom line.
It's such a pleasure to have you here, man. I am I'm a diehard Community fan,
Oh,
and
thank you.
I'm so appreciative of what you do, and this big role in the Hangover 3. I got 30 seconds left with you here, but I started off introducing you with your Twitter tagline. I'm that guy from that thing.
Yeah.
Are you willing to concede at this point that you're more than just the guy from the thing? That you're going to be, if not already, a recognizable Hollywood star?
My whole goal was just to be a working actor, man. It was never to be rich or famous, because I was already making decent money as a doctor. That was never the goal. I wanted to be that guy from that thing. I wanted to be the guy from Knocked Up Where You. Oh, I kind of saw you and said, oh, that was good enough for me. So for me to do this, using this fame or whatever notoriety I have from The Hangover, I'm just channeling that to get more work. All I want to do, and that's why I'm so happy Community's getting a 5th season. All I ever wanted to do was just be a working actor. Nothing more, nothing less. And I'm just so proud. And Chow, that's why Chow's my favorite character. And a lot of Asians, yeah.
Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you.